The Fast and the Furious franchise is all about family.
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 There's always room for family.
But just like in every family, we occasionally have feuds. So we are here to talk about the long-standing beef between Vin Diesel, The Rock, and Tyrese on the set of the Fast and Furious movies. But before we do that, go down and hit subscribe and turn on your notifications because we are posting videos like this all the time on CinemaBlend's YouTube page, and we don't want you guys to miss a single one of them. The first time that the beef between the actors in the Fast and Furious franchise went viral is when The Rock took to social media to complain about some of the attitudes that he was experiencing on the set of the 8th film in the franchise, The Fate of the Furious. The Rock actually broke his social media silence by saying that he had, quote, zero tolerance for candy asses, end quote, on the set of the new Fate of the Furious movie, and that got everybody sort of speculating about which co-star he might have been talking about. He even specified by saying, quote, some male co-stars conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken shit to do anything about it anyway. Candy asses, end quote. The Rock has been a huge addition to this franchise and generally seems to get along with everybody. So the fact that he was willing to call out one of his Fast and Furious co-stars was a really big deal as this movie was finishing production. Who could he have been talking about? Well, there was a lot of speculation. My guess personally is that he meant Vin Diesel. For this reason, we kind of know that Vin Diesel works at his own pace on projects that are really important to him, from the Fast and Furious movies to his Riddick films. And The Rock, meanwhile, is a grinder who will burn through multiple projects over the years. Now, in several social media posts that followed, the two seem to make great peace with each other without actually talking to each other, but there is really great conspiracy theories that say that the two of them could never actually be in the same scene together while filming The Fate of the Furious. And in fact, there is a scene that you can watch where Dominic Toretto goes rogue, and you see The Rock's car get flipped over, and Vin Diesel actually has to stand over The Rock's car. And if you pay close attention to how that scene is shot, it does not look like those two men are actually in the same scene together, lending a lot of credence to the fact that The Rock probably believes that Vin Diesel is a candy ass and does not want to work with him anymore. Let's get to the root of why I think these guys are mad at each other in the first place, and that dates all the way back to the addition of The Rock to the Fast and Furious franchise in the film Fast 5. The Rock was an adrenaline shot into a franchise that was struggling. Most people who even love the Fast and Furious franchise will tell you that the fourth one is probably the weakest in the entire series, and the film series needed some sort of boost. Well, adding the character of Hobbs and making him an opponent to Vin Diesel was exactly what the series needed at that time. The problem is that all of the reviews that came for both Fast 5 and the films that followed it really gave a lot of credit to Dwayne Johnson for essentially saving or reviving the Fast and Furious franchise. And if I'm Vin Diesel and this is my baby, I'm pretty offended that most of the positivity coming towards this franchise is because of the new guy that they've chosen to bring on board. So I can understand a little bit why Vin Diesel, who sees, the brainchild, he sees himself as the brainchild of the Fast and Furious franchise, would sort of step back and look at The Rock and say, hey, we were doing fine before you, we could be fine without you, and it would be up to some of the other co-stars involved in the shooting of those films to sort of back one side or the other. Now, none of this was made public. It's all just sort of been speculation and chatter, gossip online prior to the fact of The Rock going onto Instagram and calling out his Fast and Furious co-stars. But if I had to sort of pinpoint a reason why I would think that these two sort of type A personalities would go after each other, it would be because Vin Diesel's probably a little bit tired of hearing how The Rock stepped in and saved his franchise when Vin Diesel probably thinks they were doing just fine all along. Naturally, Vin Diesel, being the godfather of this largely successful franchise, is not going to rock the boat too much because he has to understand that going on social media and publicly calling out a colleague who helped boost the franchise is not going to help. However, that does not stop Tyrese from stepping in and fighting with Dwayne Johnson on social media on behalf of his boy Vin Diesel, who did help give Tyrese a career through the Fast and Furious films. Well, this comes down to a release date shuffle that has made the Fast and Furious crew a little bit frustrated in the fact that when Universal decided which film they were going to move forward with, Fast and Furious 9 or the Hobbs and Shaw spin-off, they decided to put Hobbs and Shaw first, thereby delaying the release date of Fast and Furious 9. Well, if I were to assume that Vin Diesel is upset by the fact that his sequel was delayed, we never heard anything from him. He chose to be enigmatic and stay quiet on social media, but Tyrese did the exact opposite. He went on social media and said the following: "Congratulations to The Rock and your brother-in-law, aka $7 producing partner at HH Garcia 41, for making the Fast and Furious franchise about you. And like you, DJ, even if they call, I will not be deleting this post. Good night, folks. See you in 2020 April. Hashtag Fast Family, right? Nah, it's about hashtag Team Dwayne. Hashtag 3 years. Will it be worth the wait? Hashtag no Shaw, just Hobbs. Will this be another hashtag Baywatch? Guys, just relax. I'm just a passionate film critic." End quotes. Dang! That's some shots fired by your boy Tyrese, who does not mind going on social media and calling out The Rock for the fact that Universal decided to back Hobbs and Shaw and to delay the Fast and the Furious Part 9. Now listen, I can understand from a business perspective why they would do this. They want to see if a spinoff is going to work, so they're going to push it into production. Maybe the script for Fast and Furious 9 wasn't ready yet, and maybe the Hobbs and Shaw one was ready to go with David Leitch at the helm and Jason Statham ready to join Dwayne Johnson on screen. Or maybe Universal just understands that whenever they put out the next Fast and Furious, that fan base is going to show up. But Tyrese did not mind going onto social media and taking shots at The Rock for feeling like it was his fault that the spin-off pushed their next Fast and Furious movie all the way back to 2020. Now, The Rock did not respond on social media, but he did comment on the Tyrese beef when he sat down with Andy Cohen for an interview on his celebrated talk show. The Rock, in response to Tyrese's swipe, said, "That whole thing with Tyrese, it was pretty disappointing because I had been friends with Tyrese for a very long time. I always feel like a beef requires two people to actually jump in it, and it was pretty one-sided, and he had voiced his opinion a lot on social media. Apparently, he was going through some stuff too in his personal life, but no, we haven't talked, and I don't see where we would, and to me, there's no need to have a conversation." End quote. Now, I think it's important to remember that these guys have worked together for years. Dwayne Johnson joined the Fast and Furious franchise in Fast 5, and the group together did 5, 6, 7, and 8 before the beef really surfaced online on social media. That's several years and multiple movies where these guys were friendly, and you think about not only the work that goes into putting these films together, but the work that they do to promote these films on a global scale. These guys spend a lot of time together, and yes, there was probably some beef between Vin Diesel and The Rock in terms of how they work together on screen, or maybe don't share any scenes together, and maybe there were some hurt feelings by Vin Diesel about The Rock coming in and potentially saving the franchise. But Vin Diesel seems to have moved on, and he's not commenting on it personally. Tyrese is the one being most vocal about it, and The Rock has addressed it through this interview with Andy Cohen, and it seems to be put to bed. Until we get to the point that Hobbs and Shaw opened at the box office, and Tyrese decided to rip that band-aid off one more time. At this point, everybody should have been fine to leave well enough alone. Hobbs and Shaw could go on making their spin-off films in the Fast and Furious world, and the normal Fast and Furious team could continue to make sequels like Fast and Furious 9, which will reach theaters in 2020. However, when Hobbs and Shaw had its opening weekend at the box office and opened to number 1 but didn't quite post the numbers of a normal Fast and Furious sequel, Tyrese couldn't stop himself. He posted on social media, "I have to show my respects for one thing. He tried. Folks called me a hater and attacked me for speaking out. Breaking up the family clearly doesn't have the value that one would assume it does." End quote. Now, it's very clear who he was talking about. Yet another swipe at The Rock, and the fact that he broke up the family, quote unquote, to go off and do his spin-off, and didn't do quite as well as the other Fast and Furious films have done in the past is, unfair, a little petty, childish, but isn't this entire beef kind of childish? The bottom line is that these guys have been doing really well since Fast 5 reinvigorated the franchise. Creatively, it's doing really well. Financially, it's doing really well. So they should just leave well enough alone and let the audiences keep coming to whatever Fast and Furious films the studio decides to put out, whether it's a spin-off or a segment of the main storyline. Just be happy with how everything is going. There's no need for social media beef. We're all above this. This is the Fast and Furious franchise. Why are we talking about this? And surprise! We are still talking about this a few days later, as The Rock could not let the feud die down and had to take another very subtle swipe at Tyrese on social media. In a tweet celebrating the box office success of Hobbs and Shaw, Dwayne Johnson writes, quote, "Thank you everyone for making this an exciting first week of box office for our little spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. #1 movie and $333 million worldwide ain't too shabby. And remember, the best way to shut the mouth of a clown is to flex with success and a smile." End quote. Now, of course, The Rock doesn't mention Tyrese by name here, and he could be referencing a number of clowns. But based on everything that we've discussed in this video up to this point, we have to assume this is another swipe at Tyrese, and the cycle of beef rolls on. Because this is a video about squabbles, we have to ask you guys to pick a side. Who do you think is in the right here? Is it Team Vin Diesel, which clearly includes Tyrese, or is it Team The Rock, who wants to go off and do his spin-offs? Go down to the comment section and tell us which side you think is right, which side you think is wrong, or if you just want all of us to get along and keep making Fast and Furious franchise films for an eternity. And while you're down there in the comment section, hit subscribe and turn on your notifications. You never know when we're going to do another breakdown of a huge celebrity beef, and it'd be so sad if you guys missed it because we posted it on the page and you didn't learn about it through your notifications.